Okay, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to try and figure out how to calculate the average for our Bird Beak Lab. So to calculate the average, what we need to do is we need to add the amounts that we have from our 3 trials and then divide by 3. So if I'm looking at my first trial where I have with the marbles, so I add the 3 that I got, so 18 marbles in my first trial, 16 marbles in my second trial, and 14 marbles in my third trial. I get my total, which was 48. And now I need to divide by 3, which gives me my average. So my average is that I picked up 16 marbles. To do the average for the penny, I'm doing the same thing. So I'm adding 1 plus 4 plus 20. And I divide that by 3. And in this case, I get my average as 8.3. Now, if you calculate an average that is not a whole number, but a decimal, what you're going to do is you're actually going to round it to the nearest whole number. So we had calculated the average as 8.3, and rounding it to the nearest whole number would be 8. The first one was actually a whole number, so we just leave it as 16. Now, if we're looking at our toothpicks, so if we add them all up, so 0 plus 1 equals 1, divided by 3 gives me 0.3. If we were using normal rounding rules, this would actually round down to 0, but we're not going to, this is the only scenario where we're not rounding it down to 0, but rather rounding it to 1. If I'm looking at my next situation for marbles, here, the average would actually stay as 0 because I actually did not pick up anything. So again, to calculate our average for our bird beaks, what I'm doing is I'm adding the 3, and then I divide it by 3. Next, I'm going to show you how to draw your bar graph. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to be drawing our bar graph. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to actually put your graph paper in portrait mode, so like this, where I have the analysis, graph your results using a bar graph on the top right-hand side. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to be setting up our y-axis, and our y-axis is going to be called amount of food eaten. So we're labeling amount of food eaten on our y-axis, and we're going to be marking the down at the bottom, our 0 coordinate right here, and the total amount that we could possibly eat is 20, so we're going all the way up to 20. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now, I didn't write each one of them. You can. The reason why I only wrote every 5 is because it just makes the axes less busy. Okay, so now that we've written the y-axis, now we're going to set up our x-axis. So I'm just going to zoom in to our x-axis so we can see that in a little bit more detail. So what we're going to do is now we have to write our food picked up and by what tool. So we're going to be at the 0 axis. We're going to skip 1 square, so we have 1 free square. we are going to put 3 lines together, and we're going to label this marbles. Then we're going to get 3 lines together, label this penny, and then 3 lines together, label this toothpick. And all 3 are going to be for our first tool, which was spoon. Then we're going to repeat this for our second tool, which was our tweezers. So we're going to slide this over. We're going to skip 2 spaces because our bar graph is going to be grouped by our tools, and we're going to have our food sources that are grouped together, but we're going to have spaces between our different tools. So I have this, 3 for marbles, and 3 for pennies, and 3 for toothpick, group this together for tweezers, so I have this right now, and then I have to do now one more grouping for our chopsticks. So I'm going to slide this along, skip 2 spots, 3 marbles, take 3 bars, penny, take 3 bars, toothpick, group all together for our last, which is our chopsticks. So the bottom of our x-axis for our bar graph should have spoon, tweezers, chopsticks, and for each tool have a section for marbles, pennies, and toothpicks as shown. So I've set up the base for my graph. Now what I need to do is start graphing. And the length of my bar is going to be based on my average data. So if I look at the front, what I've calculated, I see that for marbles, I have an average of 16. So that means under spoon for marbles, I'm drawing a bar that goes all the way to 16. So I'm actually going to color code this. So marbles, so 15, 16. And this, I'm going to be coloring in my bar. Marbles, and 16. What you can do, and it makes it a little bit easier, is if you just outline the border of your bar graph so I can clearly see that marbles goes all the way up to 16. Now for my next bar, I'm going to be graphing penny. I look at it, and then for pennies, my average was 8. So that means for our spoon for pennies, it goes up to 8. So 5, 6, 7, 8. That would be my size of my bar for my pennies. And I'm going to color code this as well. on my pennies. So I have my pennies, and then if I'm looking at my toothpick, I see that my average was 1. So for my toothpick, 0, 1. I'm going to just do this in black and color that in. So that's pretty much what you're doing for your bar graph. I've done it for 1. You're going to basically be doing it for your spoon, your tweezers, and your chopsticks.